Hello, and welcome to the Moms Love Coaching Podcast, where we talk about self-care from the inside out for moms. I'm your host, Carrie McFarland, along with Angie Turgeon-Ledoux. We are certified life coaches and moms, and in this podcast, we'll go beyond the take a spa day advice and talk about real and sustainable ways that you can feel better, be happier, and stay out of overwhelm and burnout. You spend your life taking care of everyone else. In this podcast, each week, it's all about you taking care of you with no guilt and no apologies. We're so happy that you've decided to spend this time with us, so go ahead and grab your favorite cup of coffee, find a comfortable place, and get ready to spend the next 30 minutes focusing on the most important person in your life, you. Okay, welcome everybody. This is the Moms Love Coaching Podcast, where we talk about self-care from the inside out for moms. I have Angie here today. Hi, Angie.
Hi, how is everybody today?
I am happy that it's not raining or snowing or, well, I guess it is windy, so I can't put that on the list, but it's not raining or snowing. It's sunny and it's cold, but that's okay.
But it's not negative 40 degrees like it was at that Kansas City football game last night that my husband was watching, and I was watching those poor schmoes out there.
Oh yeah.
And you know what was
I know.
I was remarkably impressed that the close-ups on the football players weren't showing that their nose was running. But then right before they went to break, they cut to the coach, and people, I'm not a football fan. So but the coach is this big guy, and he's an old guy with white beard, and they had a close-up of his nose, of his mustache, like below his nose, and it had all these little ice crystals on it. I'm like, well, I guess somebody's nose is running. So, and that was like, with the wind chill, it was like negative 28. And there were players out there.
I know,
whose arms were bare. I'm like, oh my gosh, you crazy.
That's what I was just going to say. My husband was watching it too. And I'm like, what is happening? It is so cold. Why in the world would they be wearing nothing on their arms?
Yeah.
You know, so, I mean, you would think that they need to keep them warmer, right? Yeah. For throwing and whatever. And one of the commentators, I remember he said, the field is like hard as a rock out there. So it's like, nobody's going to want to tackle anybody. But I don't know. Football is not my thing either, but
what those players had to be doing to take care of themselves and their mental energy in that, like to stay focused on why they were there, right? They're there to win the game for their outfit, for their, whatever, what do you call it? For their organization. They're there to win the game for their organization. And they had to stay so focused on that. And, what they must have been doing in terms of how they were managing their thoughts. Yeah, completely related to the topic for today's.
Yeah, and it totally. So it's just the things that they need to do to be physically and mentally prepared, and just the things that they physically do to prepare for the game, how much mental energy and self-awareness and really prioritizing themselves in order to get to that level, because it's not even a question. They don't even question it. It's just, This is what I need to do in order to play this game to the highest ability that I have. And they do it without even thinking about it. And I know that they kind of have a crew of people around that. Well, at least the most famous people do. Right. I don't know about the unfamous NFL football players, like how much of a team.
They got there because they learned about thought management. They had to have, it's like, you can't get to the next level of anything without being able to manage your thinking around like self-limiting beliefs and things like that about what's you're capable of. So,
right. And can you imagine where they would be if they didn't put themselves first, if they didn't prioritize themselves to be able to do those things, right? And even before, like if you think about it, you can say, well, they're in the NFL, they're making millions of dollars. Of course, they're going to prioritize themselves. It's part of their job. It's part of how they maintain themselves and the team and bring everybody to the highest level. But there was a point in their life when they weren't on that team and they were still doing all those things to be able to get on that team. And the mental strength that they needed to have in order to be able to do that is it kind of blows my mind, actually.
Right. I love
when
those
I think about
stories
it.
when they do they're doing the pregame and they bring up a player and tell the story of some, serious adversity that a player overcame. And if
Right.
it was an injury, if it was an illness, if it was the death of a loved one, and how,
Yeah.
they have had to manage their mind. And so today we're talking about micro self-care, right? And in our last podcast, I talked a little bit about how Corinne Crabtree talks about self-care, and she breaks it into 3 different types. And the first is like the big stuff we think about, like taking a retreat, getting a massage, getting a manicure. That's one of the things that we always think about when we think about self-care, like shopping therapy.
Yeah.
That really works for self-care for me, if a little of it, And then there is the barely seen stuff. And I think by seen, she means like how other people would see you do that. That would be like spending a Sunday afternoon reading a book, having
Yeah.
sending the kids to grandma's house so that you could read the book. Doing this is something that I found out, got very intimate with this summer, was taking the laundry to the laundromat and then sitting in there by myself in the laundromat. Because oftentimes I would try to go when there were nobody around. But even in the laundromat, unless it's somebody that people don't talk to each other. And it's terrific because you get a little bit of it's like alone time, but you're also being productive. But today we wanted to talk about micro self-care, which is really the unseen things that are more internal. And the idea of thought management is key to that.
Oh, I was just going to say the micro self-care in and of itself it's sort of like starter self-care, right? So if you're a person who really never or struggles, right? Never prioritizes themselves or struggles to prioritize themselves, micro self-care it's these quick, easy things that you can do. And here's the biggest benefit when you're starting this journey of putting yourself first. The micro self-care doesn't interfere with anybody else. That's always one of the biggest things I think for a lot of moms, especially.
Yeah.
I know it is for me that I struggle with doing stuff that will disrupt or interrupt or interfere in any way with somebody else's schedule. So for example, when I like walking, that's one of the things I really like to do, but I live in New England, I live in Massachusetts. So when it gets really, really cold, I don't do it as often. So when the weather is nicer and it's warmer, I'll go walking, and I'll go walk maybe for an hour, but I do it before anybody else gets up. So I'm doing it on my own, and I'm not bothering anybody else with me going somewhere and doing something. So micro self-care is a good way to kind of get you into the habit, get you into the mindset without feeling like you are disrupting anybody else. Because I think that's a big obstacle for people.
And that thought that I am disrupting others, I mean, that's where the thought management is so important, where you're recognizing that the reason you might not take a walk after work is because the kids need help with their homework, or you got to get dinner ready, or else then the rest of the evening is a mess, right?
Mm-hmm.
I used to call it the bewitching hour.
Yes.
After work, because that's when the meltdowns were usually mine. My meltdowns were rampant. And now they've taken that form of, the bag of chips while I'm trying to fix something for dinner, versus having a nice little cup of tea, or fixing myself a little bit of ranch salad dressing with some carrots or celery, something, because I want the crunch, and I'm hungry and I like to have a snack while I'm eating. But that would be that's a little shift in the way that I think about this, that I am preparing dinner, but I can also do it in a way that is more serving to myself. I can,
Right.
or if I need to take a walk after work, that dinner can wait, or I can put the kids take the kids with me. I have discovered the joys more in the last 6 to 8 months of walking my daughter's dog. So my daughter lives with me, so therefore my grandpuppy lives with me, and I walk around our yard. And I live out in the middle of, not quite the middle of nowhere, and we have probably, it's like if I walk around it 3 times, it's probably a 15-20 minute walk. So I can, depending on how many times I throw the dog her toy. But I've really found that that is just a simple thing that I've done because I had a shift in the way I think about, oh, this doesn't, a walk after work doesn't mean that I have to go 1.5 miles up the road and back down. Just walking on the flat surface, which is far more desirable when you consider my arthritic knees. And I also I don't have to deal with other people's dogs that are out. Sadie gets to be off leash, so she gets to run like a crazy dog. And that really, so I'm going around 3 times, but she's going around 10 times. So it does help, even if it's only 15 minutes.
Yeah.
But what got us to me talking about that was the importance of examining the way you're thinking about it, and just taking that little, entertaining the idea that it's possible you could be a person that prioritizes your self-care because you're willing to take that 1 minute or 10 minutes. 10 minutes sometimes can seem like way too much. So maybe it's just a minute of considering how you're feeling, or looking at, you're just taking some deep breaths, or, a variety of different things that you can do. If it's really hot, standing in front of the fan for a minute or the air conditioner. If it's really cold, going and starting the fireplace and standing in front of the fireplace, or, the space heater or something. Fixing yourself a cup of tea. That's one of the things I like to do, which I often forget to do. But I mean, you probably can Google a bazillion different little things you can do for self-care.
Yeah.
We want to talk more about how do you get yourself there to be that person that has that awareness of mind, awareness of thought, that if you were a person looking at you, you would say, there's a woman, there's a mom who takes care of herself. There's a mom who prioritizes her well-being. That might be a big stretch right now for somebody listening who's overwhelmed.
Yeah. I mean, overwhelm definitely stops people from even trying, because it just seems like too much, and you just never mind. Right. I mean, that's kind of the thought that comes to your mind, is just like, never mind. I'm not going to do it. It's too hard. It's too overwhelming. But I even want to back up just a little bit, because talking about thought work, and I know that we've talked about this in other podcasts, but really kind of diving into what that means when we talk about that. So Angie and I were certified at the Life Coach School, and the Life Coach School teaches what they call the model. And basically what the model says, and it's an awareness tool that we use in order to kind of gain awareness into our own minds. And so what the model says is that there are circumstances in the world which are facts of the world. So anything that's completely 100% factual, those things are neutral. And what we think about those circumstances create the feelings that we have. So there's circumstances, and then you have a thought about that circumstance, and then you have a feeling about that thought. Once you have the feeling, it drives your actions. So you do certain things based on how you feel, and then you create a result for yourself. So it's circumstances, thoughts, feelings, actions, and then results. So in terms of self-care, the circumstance could be anything. So let's say the circumstance is you returned home from work at 6 p.m. at night, right? So that is a circumstance that's factual. Everybody can agree on that. then your thought could be, ugh, I don't want to do anything. I just want to sit on the couch and do nothing and fall asleep. And so your feeling about that could just be complacent, exhausted. I suppose that could be a feeling that's more physical. But what are some of the feelings that would be for that, Angie? I just want
You're
to.
mentally tired.
You're mentally tired.
You feel
Yeah.
drained.
Drained. That's a good word. Yeah. I feel drained and I don't want to do. I don't want to do anything. I feel drained. And so what do? You sit on the couch, or you, grab a bag of chips, or you grab
Eat
the
popcorn for
Chinese
dinner,
food leftovers from the day before, the popcorn, right?
There's
Yeah.
leftovers. That would be a more desirable outcome than, the
Yeah.
triple popcorn that I love.
Right. Or if you have little kids, you tend to them and you do everything for them and you do nothing for yourself. And then you sit on the couch and veg and just stay there until either you fall asleep or go to bed. Right. And so the result is that you're not prioritizing yourself. And that happens over and over and over again. And if you do that long enough, it just becomes like you feel like it's a fact. Like, I can't do anything for myself. You just feel like you can't do anything for yourself.
So when you're
Or you
thinking,
think that.
I'm too tired, you get home, you're thinking, I'm too tired. You're feeling drained. So you sit on the couch, you eat the junk food, or you tend to all the kids' stuff because you know that has to be done. But the whole time you're saying to yourself, I'm just too tired. The result is that you're tired because you're not doing anything to energize yourself.
You stay tired. Yeah.
Right, you stay tired. So if I wanted the result to be, I have a little bit of energy, I can do this nighttime routine. If I wanted that result, Carrie, tell us how would you shift the way you were thinking about that same circumstance? I'm home at 6 p.m. It's been a long day. That's a thought. It's been a long day.
A long day.
How would you how might you be thinking in a way that keeps you from going to the bag of chips, going to the TV remote and sitting there? This is definitely one that has been a challenge for me.
Yeah. So I would start exploring all the different things that could be true, even if I have never done them or hadn't thought that before. So kind of really sitting and thinking what could be true. So what could be true is I can do one thing for myself. That could be something that is true. I could think I haven't prioritized myself until now, right? That could be a thought. And that could be a little bit of a jump start. A thought could be, I can practice being a person who prioritizes myself.
Yes, I like that one. That one feels very hopeful.
Yeah.
I can practice being a person who prioritizes herself.
So what happens so people go through life and they have these thoughts and they feel like they're facts, but they're really just thoughts. Facts like, I can't prioritize myself. I have little kids. I can't do anything at night because I'm taking care of them. I can't do anything for myself because, I have a job and I have to do everything for everybody else. Like all those thoughts, right? They're all kind of similar, but all those thoughts, people feel like they're true. I know that when I had thoughts like that, and when I had other thoughts that weren't giving me the results that I wanted, I felt like they were 100% true because they feel true, right? Your brain makes them feel like they're true. But what happens when you sit down and you think, what else could be true? And then it kind of starts opening your mind to thinking different thoughts. Again, even if you haven't done them before, and even if they don't feel familiar, even if you're not 100% sure that could fit for you, it still opens up the possibility of all these different thoughts that could be true for you. So it really, what it does is it loosens up that tight grip that you have on whatever thought that you have, right? Because when you're not getting the result that you ultimately want, it all ties back to a thought that you're having. The problem is that when, like, before you do this kind of work, before you do thought work, before you're really starting to be aware of how your mind works and how it all fits together, you feel like those things are true, and so it just stops you. It's like a
Right.
literal wall, right?
Right.
It's like if you
Mhm.
walk up to a wall and you're like, well, there's a wall here. I obviously can't go past this wall. But if you stand there and say, huh, I wonder, like, if that wall was there, and you're looking at it and you're like, if I could get over that wall, or if I could bypass this wall, what might I do? And then it opens up your mind to, well, maybe I could grab some rocks and build some sort of ladder so I can get to the top and jump over. Maybe I could follow the wall all the way down and see if it ends, and then I could go around it. You know, maybe there's little cracks or holes in the wall that I can grab onto and I can climb up. Right? I mean, and could those things be true? Yes. Is the wall still there? Yes. But it opens up your mind to, what could I do to make it so that I can achieve the thing that I want to achieve? So in mom's cases, a lot of times the wall is kids, work, family,
Health,
health.
their
Yep.
energy.
Yeah, so that's the wall for us, and those things come up to us and we're just like, well, I can't go any further because of this thing, whatever this thing is. So just play around with loosening up your mind to, what might you be able to do? Even if it's completely outlandish, it doesn't even matter, right? Like in the example of the wall, well, maybe I can manifest a vaulting pole and I can run and vault over it, right? I mean, that's probably not going to happen, but it's still like, it gets your mind working in the direction of finding a solution rather than just stopping and turning around and walking away.
It's that
So,
curiosity. I wonder. It started with that.
yes,
I wonder.
curiosity.
Curiosity
Mhm.
brings clarity. Curiosity brings clarity.
Yes,
And
yes.
clarity of self, clarity of being the person who manages her mind and manages her energy through little tiny micro self-care actions, because she believes that
Yeah.
she can do that you can be that person or I can become the person who practices taking care of myself. And the other thing, that the ongoing impact of this kind of thought management, of thinking about, I am the kind of person, or I'm becoming the kind of person who prioritizes self-care, is that eventually it just becomes part of who you are. And then
Right.
at some point you'll look back and you'll say, oh my goodness, I just stopped and took 30 seconds to march in place, or to just give myself a hug before I entered the house. Kids are already
Or
in
even
there.
breath work.
Right. The kids are already in there setting up on their stools to get a snack. And you're like, okay, I'm just going to take a deep breath for 30 seconds, give myself a hug, say, you got this. And then I'm ready to, somehow we find it. We find it in our, I don't want to say that it's sort of similar to, bootstrapping it, pulling yourself up from your bootstraps, because it's a different kind of energy. I think of bootstrapping as being sort of like I'm going to push through it. It's more of I'm pushing myself or dragging myself. And that's not the energy we're talking about. This is energy that is that comes from a sense of confidence that you have your back. That if you start doing these things and you're like, you know what, tonight has to be a mac and cheese night, and because I I am at that point where I'm mac and cheese and short baths for everybody, and maybe we're watching a little
Mhm.
TV before bed versus, doing the whole routine, just because you're honoring where you're at for that day. Could have been a particularly challenging day for you. You become
Mhm.
more aware of those things when you do these little baby steps. I think the micro self the power of micro self-care is the hope that it can instill in you that you can manage all the things that come at you. Doesn't mean that you're doing them
Mhm.
perfectly or doing them at all, but that you can manage as it comes at you, as the world
Yeah.
happens around you.
When you said bootstrap your way, it made me think of fake it till you make it. It doesn't really work because it never feels aligned with how you feel. And so it just creates confusion in your brain. And
Mhm.
when there's confusion, you just stop or you say no and
Right. The
you
brain
don't
doesn't like
continue.
confusion at all.
No, the brain does not like confusion at all because it takes energy to do that. And the brain doesn't like to do that, but that's a whole nother podcast. We'll
There's a
do
whole
that
other
maybe in another podcast, but that's a whole nother podcast. But yeah, the micro self-care, it I mean it all goes together, right? Having the alternative thoughts to I can't do it to maybe I could do it, and then letting yourself just do these little tiny things that take 30 seconds or less, and just doing that over and over and over and sort of strengthening your belief that you are the kind of person who can prioritize themselves. It all kind of goes together. So just giving yourself, just like loosening up your grip on I can't possibly do that to maybe I could, and having some curiosity, and then moving into the actions of, well, what would happen if for 1 week, every single day before I entered the house, I stopped for 30 seconds and I took 10 deep breaths? It's a process. So it kind of leads you into the next thing. Okay, well, I did that and I actually do feel a little better. What else could I do? Right. And just keep building on that and building on that and building on that. But it has to start somewhere. And if you start with something huge, like I'm going to take a walk, even for a half an hour, which sometimes is the advice, like go take a walk for half an hour. Well, that might not be a realistic. Number one, if you never do anything like that for yourself. Or number two, you do have little kids that you need to care for and you don't have anybody to take care of them. And depending on where you live, it's not going to make sense to bundle them up and put them in a stroller or have them walk with you outside if it's dark and cold and all that, right? So those things are real, but there's always something that you could do if you allow yourself to be curious about what those things are. And it might look very different from the standard advice that people give you. And it might look very different than what you thought it should be, quote unquote, what you thought it should be. But the end result is that you are prioritizing yourself and you are feeling better, either physically or mentally or both. And you're moving towards the goal that you have of prioritizing yourself for self-care. And it just builds and builds and builds. And it could take a while, but that doesn't matter. It's the process of it that is really the important part.
And I would just like to add that part of that feeling better is recognizing that you're showing up in the way that you're more intentional about, that you're showing up in the way that
Yes.
you want to show up. So it's not even, we're not saying that it's so that everything can feel like sunshine and roses, because that's not life. The reality of life is that it's 50-50. It's 50%, the wonderful always is balanced by the terrible. But the idea is that you feel like I can handle this, which is a much different feeling than, oh my gosh, I'm out of control and this is just a mess. Like I'm
Mm-hmm.
just a mess all the time.
Yeah.
Um, I remember having those feelings, and I wish I could say that they go away, but they rear their head every now and then,
Yeah.
when things like 15,000 things happen at the same time. It's like pile on Angie time. You guys have those days, right? So
Yep.
this little tiny moments of clarity, of curiosity, thinking about what you're thinking about is super powerful, and can bring you some relief, can bring pride in who you are, and gratitude. It just that I think the benefits of it are so myriad. There's so many.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And everybody has to start somewhere. And these little tiny micro doses of self-care that you can give yourself is, or can be, a really good way to start doing that. That's what we have for you today, everybody. Self-care from the inside out. Prioritize yourselves, and we'll see you next week.
See you next time.
Thank you so much for listening today. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean the world to us if you like, subscribe, and share. And don't forget to leave us a 5-star review on iTunes or Spotify. This makes it easier for everyone to find us and helps us spread our message about self-care from the inside out. Have a wonderful week, and remember, making yourself the priority is the highest form of self-care.